morning. My name is Richard Miller, and welcome to Never Not Here, our internet TV broadcast and our TV station in Chicago, Illinois. And many of you may know what we're up to. We're talking about what makes life easy, or probably what makes life difficult, how we get into some cul-de-sac or some kind of a problem that seems intractable, or how we get into so many circular problems that keep bobbing their heads up, and what's this all about, and hey, you again, what are you doing here? And we're all in a context, in a way, of what our fundamental experiences have been. And so then we're all trying to work in that context and improve things and see what the exact problems are. And then we speak to other people, and maybe they are in a slightly different context. Context just means like how you define yourself and how you define the world and how you define where you're free, where you can move. And, somehow that definition seems to be important, because it's hard to look beyond that definition. You just say, this is the way it is. It's not even a definition. It's just kind of like your insight as to how the world works and what is the world. And so then we speak to guests. Guests are perhaps in contexts that we are not familiar with. And then sometimes we're hanging on to our own ideas and trying to say, well, what about this? What about that? And maybe hopefully at the end of the show, we're in another context and we say, well, there's some freedom here. There's some space here. But anyhow, with that long-winded introduction, please help me welcome Ken Ludwig. So welcome, Ken.
Morning, Richard. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
I don't know. Sometimes I talk about these contexts and say, well, context to me is just like how we define our world. And so many times they quote Einstein, or they quote somebody and say, well, you can't really solve a problem from the same set of rules that created that problem. You just can move things around. And somehow we're looking for a light at the end of the tunnel. Somehow we're looking for a way to see an opening that we haven't seen before.
Well, I think lots and lots of people find themselves looking for that light at the end of the tunnel, and because they're continuing to use the same consciousness to solve the problem that they used to create it, that light often turns out to be the oncoming train, as the old joke goes. But truthfully, I think we're living in a time in history when there's lots of uncertainty. People are feeling pressured. People are feeling they're feeling forces that feel like external to them, that are forcing them into situations they don't want to be in. The employment situation, the underemployment situation, kind of that hidden piece in the background, or just merely the fact that the world is changing very, very rapidly. I refer to it as the quickening. Things seem to be happening at an accelerated pace. We have enormous catastrophes, if you will. We have these great big weather events. We have earthquakes. We have enormous business failures, economic failures, all over the planet at a rate and a magnitude that we've never seen before in history. And I think it makes people feel very uncertain about their lives and where they are. And I think when you talk about context, that what we really need to stop and think about is ask ourselves the question, who am I? And come up with a definition of who we are in this world. I find it an extraordinary exercise to sit with a pen and paper and ask myself the question, who am I? And then just stream of consciousness, right? I am, and fill in the blank after each I am. Amazing what we come out with. So often the answers are all about what we do and not who we truly are. And
so that's our context. Our context is of doing. And so
yes.
Then maybe we don't even know what "our" means, who would I be? I'd just be a lump if I wasn't doing something, right? And so then I are a lump. And so, exactly what could you say? I mean, I'm the guy that can really love a beautiful day. I'm the guy that can really love animals. I'm the guy, that has difficulty when people scold me. What are these beings that you can say, who am I am?
I think the idea is to make it an exercise. And the exercise I use, I just did a workshop this past weekend where I used this exercise. I did the thing that I just described. I asked the guys to write down at the top of their piece of paper, who am I? And then we spent about 3 or 4 minutes just stream of consciousness. I had guys writing down things like, I am a noodle, I am a worm, I am a fungus. But that was just part of the stream of consciousness because I told them, do not edit yourself. And then when we were done, I did about a 12 or 13, 14-minute meditation with them, which was about expanding consciousness. And I can explain that to you if you like. The bottom line is you just try to take what you consider to be your consciousness, your conscious awareness, and expand it outside of your body and go farther and farther into space, the ether, whatever you want to call it. And in the process, recognize that everything you ever wanted, everything you ever desired, everything you ever tried to accomplish in your life, all of the people you know, all of the reality you know, eventually becomes part of or encompassed by your consciousness. And after we did that meditation, I had them immediately in silence go right back to their piece of paper, a second piece of paper actually, and right at the top of it, who am I? And then we did that I am exercise again. And interestingly enough, everybody in the room had different answers than they did in the beginning, and it all went in the direction of their being and not their doing, which it was an extraordinary exercise. And I had this whole room was grown men, and all their faces were lit up, and they were like, wow, that's different. And it was very cool.
It seems like I've done some guided meditations or participated with some that asked us to kind of spread out beyond the globe, let's say. I don't even know. I mean, I'm not so sure that it was an effect that I could really relate to or not. There were some relaxing, sure, because the focus get wider and in a way it's an imagining, right?
Well, yeah, the power of our thoughts comes from our imagination. It's without any question. There is nothing has ever been accomplished on this planet without a thought that originated in the imagination, really.
We don't really know that, though, right? We don't know that nothing has ever been accomplished without a thought.
Well, it's very hard to even imagine, going back to the imagination, it's hard to imagine even anything being done without some kind of thought, whether conscious or subconscious. There is some underlying intelligence that activates whatever activity goes on.
Right, maybe subconscious, right? So then something
Sure.
is happening. But I mean, I remember times when I got into danger, and you think that people say, well, if a bus is coming, you're afraid, and you're supposed to be afraid and stuff. But I remember times when I got into pretty big danger, and there was really not a thought. I was trying to survive. Sure, I was in total activity. I was trying to save the day and all that. But I mean, there was really no thoughts that I didn't really have time for many thoughts.
Well, there's no conscious thought involved there. What happens in that instance is our bodies immediately go into the fight or flight response, and all the blood of our brain moves to our reptilian brain, which is there to protect us, and there is no conscious thought in the reptilian brain. That's all subconscious thought. It's all hardwired thinking that puts us into a mode of survival. Interestingly enough, when science has now proved that when we get into that fight or flight response, we are instantaneously dumber, which I find an extraordinary concept. And the reason is because the blood goes to that reptilian brain, which doesn't, as I said, doesn't have any conscious thought, and it drains away from the frontal lobe, which is the source of all of our conscious thinking. And so instantaneously we lose some ability to consciously think or to logically move forward as long as we are in fight or flight.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes that makes sense. And what I'm referring to is a couple times, well, it could be like a spin out on a speedy highway, in a snowstorm, where somehow I don't know if there was really time to do any cognition or any kind of thinking. Another time when we went off the road and really close to a cliff, almost went over it. And I don't think that was a fight or flight response. Somehow, without any kind of hesitation, I found ropes and chains and belayed this car onto a tree, and somehow we were able to, without much risk, back it out of there. And I don't feel necessarily that thought would have been a plus in that occasion, but I mean, sure, I guess thoughts were there because I knew exactly what to do. But I mean, there was no emotional charge on it, you know.
I think we get. I think we all get into those situations where we have kind of a combination of things going on. There is the combination of our subconscious programming that is, in some instances, fight or flight. In some instances, just simply the subconscious programming of our mind around things that we have learned, which are not necessarily fight or flight. And the slippery road, the almost going off a cliff. We have some kind of built-in responses that we've learned over the course of many years of driving. We have this subconscious programming that kicks into place, but we also, I mean, you don't subconsciously get out and tie off a vehicle and so forth and so on. There's lots and lots of conscious thought that has to be involved there. So it's kind of a combination of things. I think some of us are blessed by kind of a rapid kind of thinking, if you will. And I'm not sure. I'm sure that's not a scientific terminology for it. But sometimes I think when the adrenaline kicks in those scarier situations, the adrenaline kicks in, and some of us are just better prepared than others to move into action with, again, that combination of subconscious programming and conscious thought and logical movement.
I've been, every once in a while I read books. Sometimes I get off on them and sometimes not so much. And a lot of times I don't really bring in other people in an interview and really think about who said this or if they're right or if they're wrong or, But I had this idea last night. I'm not even so sure what it is, but I wanted to read a couple of pages just to set a tone and see where we go from that. And I don't know. I guess I ask your permission to do it, but
I'm game. Take a shot.
Yeah, take a shot at it. Okay.
See how it works.
See how it works. Let's see if I can read it first of all. But this guy's name is Paul Lowe,
with whom I'm totally unfamiliar.
Yeah, right. He's in Australia now, so he's not really too connected.
There are lots of Australians that are well connected.
Yeah, right. Well, he's doing his thing there. Now take some time to be with what is going on. Open to all for which you feel grateful. Allow yourself to disconnect from the things about yourself you have not accepted. Let your heart open to all that you do appreciate about yourself, all that you enjoy, everything that you love. Take a breath in. As you do, feel that love. Appreciation and gratitude go deep inside, bathing and nourishing every cell. You have been hammering those cells with your complaints, your difficulties, your judgments. Recharge them now with love, your caring and gratitude. As you breathe in, take in the air. As you breathe out, let the energy flow through your whole body, to your fingertips, to your toes, to the top of your head. As you breathe out, imagine the breath and the energy dancing through all the cells, spinning them, throwing off old, and starting to vibrate with the new, cleaner, lighter, brighter. Now listen to me very gently. The parts of you that have not been loving are under great strain. The parts of your body that you do not like, the thoughts and behaviors you have not been accepting, the emotions you have not wanted to feel. You have been cursing them every time you have not wanted them. Imagine now, as you feel the love and gratitude in each breath you take and breathe in and breathe out, you are sending love and caring to those parts of you that need your support. If you have not been accepting your anger, if you have been angry about your anger, that is a cursing. Instead, bless it, support it, care for it, so you can start to move. If there is a part of your body that you do not like, you have probably been cursing it without realizing, because your body has not been the shape or the weight you want, or because it has given you trouble or pain. You have gone against it and burdened it with your judgment. Instead, now, love it and care for it. Take along your preference for how you would like it to be, but just lightly, as a preference, not as a demand. Do not put more pressure on that part of you. Take a moment to do the same with your automatic behaviors. Instead of being against them, take along your preference that you would like them to shift, but in a loving and caring, supportive way. Planet Earth is a challenging place to be. It was designed to be that way, to be an adventurous training ground. When you do something that takes you out of balance, instead of blaming yourself for missing an opportunity, for going unconscious, bring in your love and your caring. Let us take this a bit further now. There are people in your life that you have found it difficult to be with. It may seem that they have been against you or made your life hard, but take another look. They have been giving you opportunities. You may not have recognized them, but then look again now. The more unpleasant they have been, the bigger the opportunity for you to find that place of love and acceptance in yourself. It is comparatively easy to love the people who are supportive, but with the people who are not, it's an opportunity for you to go deeper into your love. If you find there is someone you cannot love who seems to be an enemy, and it's impossible to love at the moment, do not blame yourself for not loving them. Do not stop the love for yourself because you are not loving them. Just remind yourself, this is the way it is at the moment. We are not denying what we usually call the heavy side, the dark side, the negative side. Instead of being against it, we are going with it. If you have a cut on your finger, it is painful. You do not hit it because you're upset at it. You clean it. You put something on it. You bind it up. You help it to heal. You take care of it. Very gently, very quietly. See if you can allow this possibility inside. You are going to start your life again now. Let go of all the things you have missed, the regrets, the old ways you have been. You are going to begin with much awareness, as much support, as much caring as you can bring in each moment. Do not be against anything, not even your own againstness. Gently allow yourself to stay more in your heart, more in your caring, for yourself and for another. And remember, this is it. This moment, each moment, your life starts right now. In each moment, anything is possible. Anything.
A lot of stuff there.
You know, that's a context that we're really not used to at all. That's a context of accepting. And, you know, we're the first ones not to accept ourselves. And you know, someone once asked me about the right to health care. And I said, when you kind of look at it, what we have in the Western world is the right to sickness, the right to be upset. You know, it's our right to be upset with someone, and we believe that it's effective, especially to be upset with ourselves. Somehow we have that belief that that's useful, you know, and that those people deserve that, and that you know, we fell down there too, that we should actually buck up and do something in a totally different way. That's a context. And I mean, is there another are we speaking to people that can jump out of that context and go into something about accepting, you know, starting with this unit right here?
You know, I'm not so sure that we can talk about it in terms of jumping into acceptance, but without question, I feel that on the planet right now, there are more and more and more people who are learning about acceptance, that are recognizing that acceptance of the self is first and foremost. There's an old expression about all of our problems in this world stem from our mistaken belief that something outside of our own hearts must change first. And I think that's one of the key pieces, is we have to learn to be with ourselves and to be comfortable in our own skin. And, you know, that's, what was that fellow's name? Paul Lowe?
Correct, Paul Lowe.
You know, he talks about that in different ways. He talks about being in the now, bottom line. Being in the now is really nothing more than learning to use our conscious thought processes more than our subconscious processes. At this point in time, virtually everybody is operating from their pre-programming. The 85, 90, even 95% of all the thoughts that most of us have each and every day are the exact same thoughts we had yesterday and the day before and the day before that. And it's our subconscious mind that will just continue to run. It is always fully prepared to operate and to run our lives so long as we let it. And really, from a perspective of ease, if you will, or maybe laziness more likely, it's the default programming. It's where we just simply allow what our mind thinks it recognizes as the daily vicissitudes of life to continue to react. It doesn't get us anywhere different. It doesn't get us anywhere new. You know, the old expression about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. Well, in truth, Richard, we all live in that definition because each and every one of us who, when we're not making an effort to change who we are or how we present it to the world by activating conscious thought processes, making decisions to be consciously different from what I have been in the past or up until this moment, then what we're doing is living in that, doing the same thing over and over and over again. Why in God's name would any of us ever expect anything to be any different? Because it certainly can't be if we're doing the same things over and over again.
Right on. But I mean, okay, we said unconscious thought processes. So if we're talking about the unconscious process, there's no expectation there because whatever we're doing is unconscious. So then why we're not really expecting things to change because that expectation is also unconscious at that moment. In other words, what we're finding out or what we're discussing many times is that one thought leads to another, and a thought is built on a certain set of beliefs or, again, a context. I may be overusing this context word too much, but it's again, a thought has to be built on a certain axioms, let's say, if we take it to mathematics. And those axioms only can build a certain amount of thoughts within that axiom. And so then, if you keep going with it, it has to start to turn back on itself and circle. And so whether that's conscious or whether that's unconscious, we're saying that process is the same. And that somehow that when you find some peace, when your thought process can come to rest for a moment, then it disconnects with that old context, and then all of a sudden a new brainstorm can come, like a new thought can pop in, but it doesn't necessarily have the limitation of that context. Maybe it has another context. You expand that context, and context there is a definition, in other words, of how life works or how. Thought is just a mirror of life, right? I mean, we're living. The whole world is doing its thing without thoughts. Only humans have thoughts, as far as we know, right? Animals have some basic thoughts, maybe, but not like the abstraction capability of a human to have a language, to have sounds in a language that have meanings, and then those meanings have emotional charges on them. Communism or capitalism, or just a word can have a whole history, whole lifetime of history behind it.
Well, anytime you attach an ism to it, what you're really talking about is a core belief. And that's what I think the context thing that you're referring to is really about core beliefs. Everything that we think, say, and do is a function of our core belief system. And we structure our entire lives around our core beliefs. Core beliefs basically, for the most part, serve us. But there's lots and lots of core beliefs that don't serve us, that keep us stuck in those limitations. And as long as we operate within that same set of core beliefs, the limitations are built in. The only way we can ever change that is to engage conscious thought processes. And we can engage conscious thought processes through what I would refer to as daily practice. None of us is good at anything that we are good at because of some magical epiphany or some lightning strike of brilliance. We're good at the things we're good at because we practice them. And we've spent a lifetime practicing things that are great for us and things that are not so great for us. My point of reference is that I was a raging alcoholic for 20 years. And at the end of my drinking career, I drank 2 bottles of vodka a day. Well, I didn't just wake up one morning and decide I'm going to drink 2 bottles of vodka today for the rest of my life, because that would have lasted one day. I'd have been dead. I drank 2 bottles of vodka a day and really had very few drunken moments. simply because I practiced it. So we practice the things that we're good at and the things that we're bad at, if you will, but they become part of our lives via practice. If we want to change that, we can change it via practice. But we can't just expect we're going to do something new and different today and our lives are going to be new and different tomorrow. We probably need to do something new and different over and over and over again. You know, they say that it takes 21 days to create a new habit. Well, I'm here to tell everyone that that's a bunch of baloney. It doesn't take any less than 30 days because in those 21 days, you're going to skip a few. So go 30, and then you got a better shot at it. But if I do the same thing that is different from my old processes, my old behaviors, if I do the same thing repeatedly over a course of time, what I do is create new subconscious programming. What I do is if I am changing an aspect of my behavior, when I stop firing the neurons in my brain that are connected to that behavior that's not serving me, and I replace them with now new connections in the same subject matter, in the same area, with more life-affirming or more positive, if you will, thoughts, then what I do is create a new default so that I automatically now will go to a more positive and uplifting place than I was at in the past, if that makes sense to you.
Well, I mean, I think in many areas, and you brought up a few, it's not all that easy, So then as I understand what you say, practice is just what I'm doing every day. I seem to be repeating this pattern. Okay, let's say I drink coffee and milk, and I say, I probably could get along without this coffee, but tomorrow I drink it again, And then I could say, okay, for 21 days, and you said go 30, I can stop drinking it, and then maybe I would be off of caffeine. But I mean, okay, what about alcohol? You could say okay, for 21 days, and I'll go 30 because I want to really go for it. I'm just going to not drink any alcohol. But there's a lot of alcoholics that have even gone dry for years, and then all of a sudden they're back in the binging.
Well, you know what? And interestingly enough, that's a product of core belief systems because the alcoholism, now this is my belief, right? I've been sober for over 23 years. And I went to 12-step meetings for less than 1 year. I walked away and I never looked back. But what I have done over the course of those last 23 years is worked on the core belief systems, the underlying issues that I was medicating with vodka and cocaine. I poured vodka and cocaine all over everything that was bothering me, that was painful to me, that was not who I truly was in this world, not knowing how to show up as authentically myself, not knowing that I was really a spiritual being creating this human experience, just simply pursuing all of my joy, all of my fulfillment external to me. And as I did that, then alcohol and drugs just seemed to be the logical way to go. I mean, there was a point in my life where the only things that mattered to me when I woke up in the morning was my first cigarette, my first drink, and my first line of cocaine. Over time, I learned to change those core beliefs that made those things the most important aspects of my life so that other things are more important to me now. When I get up in the morning now, the first thing I want to do is meditate. That's a whole lot different than a vodka and cranberry juice, let me tell you. And so it really is about deciding. My process is a threefold process, Richard. It's about discipline, willingness, and practice. First of all, you have to have the discipline to want to change something. And discipline is one of my favorite words in the world. Because I once in the young adult group that I facilitate on Sundays, I asked them, if I asked you for a definition of the word discipline, what would it be? And one of the young girls went, she made the whip sound and made the movement of cracking a whip. And I said, exactly, we all think discipline is some kind of a punitive thing. That's not what it is. The root word of discipline is disciple. And a disciple is really someone who takes on a set of practices and principles for their own personal betterment, their own personal development. And the root word of disciple in Latin is discipulus, which simply means pupil. And if you go further down the etymology of the word, it comes from the Latin discere, which means to learn. So the bottom line is discipline is about being a student of my own life. And the next thing I need to activate is some willingness. And willingness is the desire to do that different thing, to activate something new in my life, as opposed to willpower. Willpower is just an argument I set up between me and me, and so we know who loses that argument. Willingness is about wanting to take that next step, wanting to go a little bit farther down the road to accomplish what it is I'm looking to accomplish. And the final piece is practice, practice, practice. I mean, every single one of us was told by our mommies when we were little boys, we were told, and little girls, we were told, practice makes perfect. Well, that's not true. What practice does do is it makes permanent. And not only is that a great concept, and not only is it great metaphysics, but there is now actual science that proves that. There is neuroscience that proves if I practice new behavior over time, it becomes my behavior. And that's the way it works. I think really what I'm looking to touch base on here is the idea that the old Chinese proverb is, may you live in interesting times. And I think without question we live in the most interesting of times right here and right now. And from a spiritual and metaphysical perspective, my belief is that at some juncture in the great cosmic soup, we all decided to be here together at this time to contribute our piece to the puzzle to what I believe is a shift in consciousness that is going on right here, right now, in this moment. And lots of us are clear that we are moving in the right direction, that we are engaging ourselves in positive, uplifting, life-affirming behaviors, and maybe holding a light, if you will, for those who might wish to follow us, or those who might wish to take a new direction, not necessarily follow us, but find a new direction in their lives to give them.
Well, just to find life-affirming, what to them would be a life-affirming. In other words, life-affirming is really almost a kind of a new gig for humanity, right? Because
oh yeah, there's no two ways about that.
We're just even with our addictive behavior, we're just saying this life is no good unless I can really blast myself and somehow jump out of my skin, right? And so life-affirming behavior is what we all need, and somehow that's an inclusiveness too, because we're not only affirming our own life, but we're affirming those lives that we find around us. And nowadays, that's farther and farther away because of the connectivity of the globe.
A huge piece of the puzzle is the connectivity of us all. Is the idea is oneness, and of course, like we always do as human beings, what we get caught up in is we hear the idea of oneness, and then we conceptualize the bejesus out of it, which is what we're really good at, is complicating things and making an intellectual concept out of everything. But oneness is a feeling. Oneness is a knowing without any doubt whatsoever that I am one with each and every person, but with every entity on this planet, that there is only really truly one of us, and that we are all connected. None of us is in this alone. We are all in this together, and the purpose of this existence is to find joy for ourselves and joy for one another. And a big piece, the simplest piece of that puzzle, Richard, is the word that you used earlier. That's acceptance. That's the simplest piece. And from there, it blossoms out into a feeling of wholeness and a feeling of oneness that engages all of us with each other. We are here in this life, in this human experience, to experience it via our relationships. And our relationships are more than just my relationship with you, my relationship with my fiance, with my dog. It's about my relationship with the planet, with the grass, with the air, with every thought that I have, with every situation I encounter. And if my relationship is always to ready, fire, aim with my subconscious pre-programming, then I'm going to experience a lot of victimhood. I'm going to experience a lot of being the flotsam and jetsam of other people's creation of their existence, rather than if I use my conscious thought processes, if I stop and engage myself in this moment, in this now, which is not, I'm not saying for a second that this is an easy idea. It's as simple can be, but it is absolutely not an easy thing from the perspective of the world we live in right now. And what we need to do as individuals, it has to start on an individual basis. I cannot change you, nor do I intend to change you or to change your consciousness. The only consciousness I can change is my own. And as I lift my own consciousness around this feeling of oneness, of acceptance, of wholeness, of love, period. Not love for anything, just of love. As I uplift my consciousness, all of consciousness comes with me, because there is truly only one consciousness, and there ain't no place else for it to go, but along with each and every one of us who lifts our consciousness. There's a long-winded explanation.
You were saying if we're talking about oneness and letting the whole planet really and all other individuals in. And you were saying if I'm just taking my subconscious behavior patterns and going ready, aim, fire, but I'm not so sure that's not the same with my conscious pre-programs or what I think that what I think reality is all about. And I'm ready, aim, fire in my consciousness too. And it seems to me to kind of take a pause. It takes some kind of a pause to let another in, whether that is the grass or the. We were doing a class on topsoil last night, and just saying, well, what is this stuff that we walk on all over, and that really is supporting us in every way with life, and we just never let it in. It's just dirt, and so then it takes some kind of a pause, and maybe that's what you say when now you're into meditation. So then you are taking a pause, and that is kind of like a thing that could be actually. Your whole life could be a meditation in a way, enough of a pause where you were realizing that the other is here, whether the other is this human or other kind of a form.
Absolutely. And, it's the pause I think the pause is the key piece in so many ways to being able to, and it's not ready, aim, fire, because our subconscious mind doesn't do ready, aim, fire. It does ready, fire, aim. Because it sees.
I thought you said that, but then I kind of reversed it because I thought maybe I got it wrong. Yeah, okay.
No, that's a purposeful statement because our subconscious mind. Let me just step into this, and I don't want to lose this point about the pause, but the subconscious mind thinks it recognizes a situation, and it fires off its pre-programmed reaction to that situation, never bothering to be certain that it knows what it's doing. Our conscious mind, on the other hand, is the one that logically processes and decides what the appropriate response is to the situation. Now, to your point, we're kind of mixing metaphors a little bit here, if you will, but the idea that the conscious mind is also a little pre-programmed is it's almost on base. To me, it's a little off base because the conscious mind is just subject to our core belief systems. It has a hard time going outside of the core beliefs, if you will.
Well, that's a huge program, isn't it? The core belief system is just a huge program.
Well, the core belief system is maybe our source material for our programming. It's our core beliefs are the original subconscious programming that maybe we got from our parents, from teachers, and it's not just a thought. It's many. We have many, many, many core beliefs. From those core beliefs, we form our subconscious programming, but we also then have those as the parameters of our conscious thought unless we make a change.
Well, those core beliefs, they've all changed. Certainly they've changed in your life from how you explained your life. And so that they are open to become more appropriate. And so then it takes a pause to even look at them and say, well, or even it takes way more than a pause to look at them. It takes some kind of real insight to see them because, for me, the core beliefs are half under and half above, conscious and subconscious, because the ones that we gained by, let's call it imitation. We imitated or reflected our culture as a child and our parents. We imitated their behaviors and their moods and where they were angry and their racial prejudices and all those things we imitated. And so then from that imitation, we didn't really put it in as a cerebral function that we were conscious of. It was just kind of like a movement or a vibration. And so then I'd say the core beliefs are very much submerged.
Well, there's varying core beliefs. There are deep-seated ones. There are core beliefs that came prenatally. There are core beliefs that we got hardwired for some things, particularly in our fight or flight response in the womb, by virtue of our mother's experience of life. But we also then develop core beliefs during those first 5 or 6 years when we have very little in the way of conscious thought, when we are really just sponging from the world around us. We collect all of our base reactions emotionally, all of our base reactions in fear or in love. We collect those from our parents and from our associations when we are very young. And again, without a whole lot of conscious thought, just simply by absorbing those. But
so all those would be subconscious, right? If we just absorb them?
Part, those are all subconscious, yes. And again, go back to the conscious belief system, the conscious thought process, I'm sorry. Your conscious mind is capable of overriding any subconscious programming you have. But, back to the point from a couple of minutes ago, the pause is necessary. You've got to have something that gives pause to intercede, to short circuit that subconscious reaction and give your conscious mind the opportunity to respond. Now that can be on the level of just a moment in an instant, or it can be on the level of core beliefs. I want to stop and say to myself, okay, this core belief is not serving me at all. What do I need to do to make a new core belief out of that, to change that core belief system? Now, the pause thing, I don't want to let that go because that's huge to me. Again, practice is what it's all about in my realm. And I have a practice every single morning before my feet hit the floor. I say a few things before I get out of bed in the morning. And one of the things I say is, in every situation and circumstance that I encounter today, I present the very best version of me that I have available in that moment. What that simply is an affirmation that I use to give me the opportunity to stop. When those things happen, like, take the what seems to be the basal aggravation for all of mankind is driving. Okay, when I have that instantaneous reaction from my subconscious programming about what a lousy driver you are, to put it mildly, okay, I want to have the ability to have that affirmation pop in my head before I react and give me an opportunity to respond with the idea that, you know what, maybe that person has something else on their mind. Maybe they're on their way to the birth of a child. Maybe they've just gotten a horrible diagnosis from their doctor. I don't know what's going on in their mind. And the truth of the matter is the next stupid thing that I do behind the wheel is not going to be my first one either. So it gives me an opportunity, rather than be judgmental, rather than to activate all the negative thought processes and all the incredible negative chemical things that go on in my body from that negative thought, rather than have that reaction, I can stop, respond with my conscious mind, and eventually build a whole new reaction that just is up-leveled, if you will, from where it was before.
I think that's great. I think you can take it another step also, because you can say, why would I even comment on how another person is driving? And I would say it's because I have a belief that I'm going somewhere important, and that my life is important, and that my appointments are important. And it's all an abstraction. It's a whole series of abstractions. And the whole purpose of these abstractions is to take me away from this moment and to take me away from these pauses. And to make me believe that I am a meaningful person, and I am on a path today that's adding to society and adding to my personal wealth or whatever. And somehow I'm using my time wisely, and I'm using my life wisely. And these are all a whole bunch of judgments that are all based on that I'm needy, that I need to get done what I want to get done, that I'm not okay as I am, that I'm not whole. And you can really look into so much of that. And let me say one more thing, because I just had a brainstorm about when you said ready, fire, aim. And I think that's what we do all the time is ready, fire, aim. And, what I read, that reading I did, it says, okay, you go ready, fire, then forgive yourself for that, accept that, but the aim part to me, what does that mean? It means that my explanation of why I'm right and why I hit a bullseye, why that my bullet that I shot before I even aimed it, was actually correct to go where it went. And that's kind of like an interpretation or an explanation or a justification. And that's where a good pause is, if you stop applying all your justifications and your explanations and just say, and then start accepting the fact that you went ready, fire, and you did fire. And whether you're trying to say that I hit the mark or I didn't hit the mark, that comes afterwards. That's an overlay. And that's where you really start to believe yourself,
That's the ego needs to validate its existence. So the ready, fire, aim paradigm is exactly what you just said. After having fired, then the aim part is the validation piece. If you give yourself the pause and actually go to ready, aim, fire, then the aim piece becomes a piece of logical thought, a piece of conscious determination that this is, yes, indeed, that what I wish to fire at, or this is what I wish to fire. So it's two different things, and the pause makes them different. And they're all all of that judgment stuff is all a function of the ego. The ego wants to, it always wants to maintain itself. Its purpose is to defend itself and to validate and rationalize its existence. Now, that's not to say, I'm not one of these people who gets all involved in the idea that ego is 100% bad. It's not. We need our ego. It's part of who we are. It's part of how we identify ourselves. But the egoic needs to understand, to judge, to compare, and to be right get us into trouble all the time. Those are the times when we find ourselves making other people less than us. You know, there was I read the other day a great quote from Rumi, I believe it was, that lots and lots of people grow taller by cutting off the heads of others. And that's how our ego works. It needs to judge, compare, be right, and understand so that it can make lift us above all of those around us and make them less than us. Going back to your point around the idea that that's how we get to rationalize that my needs are more important. Where I'm going is more important. Everything I'm doing is more important than what you're doing. So how in God's name could you cut me off in traffic? Those kinds of ideas are all stemming from that egoic need to be right.
But remember, like you know what I want to say is that that's the process of the mind, is comparing and judging. That's just built in. So then if you say that in a kind of a harsh way, and maybe it sounds like maybe you shouldn't be doing that already, then you're not going to be able to accept that. But if you just say that is the way the mind functions, and then that's, you know, as far as ego goes, when we think the ego is the only thing out there. I mean, ego can be in a lot of different ways. It can take on a lot of different characteristics, you know, and it's a way to relate, right? And so then that's cool. But I mean, if it has to be a certain way and it's fixed, then we're so identified with being right about that. But if we just let it go in many different directions, I think then it can really serve us.
Absolutely. You know, and I think you bring up a good point that the mind or the brain really is it's an instrument of judgment and comparison. That's what it does. The key piece for me is to always be using it for positive purposes. I don't need to compare myself to the other driver to make him less than me. I don't need to judge someone because their behavior doesn't appeal to me. I don't need to judge them. I can discern that their behavior doesn't work for me. But at the same time, if I'm going to embrace the concept of oneness as a way of life, then I absolutely must accept them for who and what they are and the point that they are at in their path, on their path, through this human experience, and not judge the person. The behavior doesn't work for me. I don't like what they're doing. But the person, I simply love for their existence on the planet, for their existence moving through this realm along with me. And you know what? And I do want to say, that that's, you know, it's great for me to say that, and it flows off my tongue easier and easier and easier because it's what I'm about in the world. Now, do I practice that each and every day, 24/7, 365? Heck, no, because it's not easy. Because people do get me mad. Because I do get ticked off at someone's behavior, and I do judge them as a jerk, an idiot, a moron because of what they did. Because, you know, I've done plenty of jerky, idiotic, moronic things in my life. It doesn't make me any of those things. And if I stop and recognize that when I do something that other people don't like, doesn't define me as a human, as a spiritual being, it simply defines that action that I just did as unacceptable.
I, again, was reading, actually it was Paul Lowe again, you know, and he was saying that we all have a favorite behavior. You know, and you can see people that have their personality is angry, or their personality is frustrated, or their personality is like poor me. You know, I'm always downtrodden, or I'm a victim. And then he just kind of anyhow, you could just notice that when there's some kind of an upset or some kind of a wobble that goes on, and who knows what that is, it has to be a sensation, right? It comes in, you know, you're receiving information on your senses. And somehow there's a sensation, and when there's a wobble, there's a tendency to go to your favorite behavior, the one you're used to. And it's kind of like your predominant, your anger or whatever it is. And then probably rarely is it appropriate at that moment. But then you can just notice, well, what would happen if I didn't go to that? And, that's really my favorite. And like, okay, me, I like to push. I kind of like push my way through places because I feel like I'm blocked. There's something about blocking that I don't like. And so I push. And so then the way I do it is I disguise it with an enthusiasm, like, come on, we're go-getters, we can do it, And so then push with enthusiasm would be something that I would misplace, or I would push on all kinds of people, and not all of them like it,
Right.
And so then I'm kind of like seen as a pushy guy, And so then you can kind of say, oh, there I go again, And then you could say, okay, it could be interesting to stow that behavior for a second or just let go of it, Somehow just not choose it and see what would happen. Well, what would happen is that stable, wobbly point would be there, And you'd say, you could start to look and say, well, investigate. Well, why? And not only why is that there, but, I mean, is it that bad? First of all, you might notice the process of put a why to it. But I mean, if you could just kind of stay with that kind of thing, okay, I would be feeling like I'm blocked. This guy's stalling me out. This guy's, I get brilliant ideas and I do a lot of work on it. I set up the groundwork and then they just do nothing, They just don't even, open my proposal, and a month goes by. What's the point? And so then I feel blocked, where am I going to wiggle around here and push this? And so then stay with that feeling like I'm not really, I'm not effective. Somehow I can't make this person listen to me. Somehow my programs are being ignored, or my proposals or something, and stay with that. And then where would I get? Then I would start to feel what I don't like, and then what would happen out of that? Maybe I would just process it. And say, okay, well, he doesn't want to do it, go somewhere else, do it with someone else, or give him time, or he, trying to find the respect in there, that this guy's got a lot of things to do. He thinks he's a busy, important person. That's his illusion, and let him have it, Maybe he's got 300 emails a day. Well, God bless him, I'm glad I don't. There's so many ways to look at it. Then you can start to repicture it or restory it.
Reframe it.
Yeah, reframe it, and then it takes on a new feel too.
Yep, and you stop. And what you do is, what you learn to do is, you learn to stop telling the story. That is, you just laid out a scenario that is so human. It is so much what we all do, where things happen to us that were not our expectation. Okay, and that's where we get in trouble the first time, is to have expectations. But we have these expectations of things, and we send off. Use your example. We send off a proposal to somebody, and they don't read it, or they don't respond to us, or we don't get any kind of reaction from them at all. And we then create a story. Maybe he's got 300 emails. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's got other proposals. Maybe he thinks I'm a jerk. Maybe he doesn't like me. We do all of these things, and the bottom line is none of that matters. Terry Cole Whitaker wrote a great book years ago. Your opinion of me is none of my business, and that's really a great way to look at life from the perspective of other people responding to us. If I have expectations of them, then I am only setting myself up to defeat and to failure, because my expectations of the world are not necessarily the way the world is going to perform. And what happens is, if I get into these negative feelings about, okay, now I'm not good enough. Now I'm a pushy guy. Now my proposals aren't worthwhile. Then I get emotions around that. Then I create what? I create a new core belief system around my own abilities. And now what am I going to create? Just more and more of the exact same thing. I'll never have a proposal get read. They'll all be ignored.
Especially if I go to my old favorite behavior and push harder and harder and harder. And I should just look at it and say, okay, I can wait. I can go at another angle. I can try to find some coalition of the willing and approach this person with more people. I can enroll whoever will listen, and not just say push on this guy and get upset about it, and not do my old favorite behavior.
See maybe what can I learn from the situation? Is this particular situation? Is there something here that I missed? Is there some way I can show up differently or better? And I don't want to miss this one point here, because it's kind of big to me. The idea that I have a certain set of favorite behaviors, okay? And I think we all have those. I think you're 100% right about that. We all have favorite behaviors, and some of those favorite behaviors we don't even like as we express them. We're like, geez, there I go again. I wish I wasn't doing that. And I have a little system for people to try. It's called catch and correct. And I use this in my spiritual counseling practice. If there's something that I want to change, I just make a mental decision that I'm going to change that. And then, as time goes by, every time I catch myself exhibiting that behavior, I just make a mental note. I don't beat myself up. I don't tell myself what a loser I am because I'm still doing that. I just simply say, that's not how I wanted to present into the world, and I will do better next time. And over time, what will happen is that behavior will fade away, and a new behavior will take its place. And it doesn't happen, again, it's not something that happens overnight. It's about practice, practice, practice. And my simple example for that is, it was probably 12, maybe 15 years ago now, Richard. One day, I don't remember why, but one day I just decided I will never again have a negative or blasé response to anyone when they ask me, Ken, how are you? You know, we all say something silly like, I'm hanging in there. Same stuff, different day, although I usually didn't say stuff. We all have these responses that we throw into that space, and they're all kind of, who cares, really? I started just with the simple idea of, now I'm going to say something positive. And people would ask me, how are you? And I would say, great. I would say, wonderful. Once in a while, I would say, hang it in there. And I would make that mental note and say, that's not what I wanted to say. I wanted to be positive. Excuse me. And now as time has gone by, all these years later, when people ask me, how are you? They expect me to say something like, well, those who know me expect me to say, I'm magnificent. I'm fabulous. I am wonderful. You want to change lives. This is the simplest way to change the energy around me that I've ever known in my whole existence. You go to the grocery store, and the little girl is there at the checkout counter. She doesn't even look up as she's scanning your groceries and says, how are you? You try just once saying, I'm magnificent, and see if life hasn't just changed all around you, because that little girl looks up and says, what? I'm magnificent. I wish I could be magnificent. Well, you can be. It's a decision I make before I get out of bed in the morning. And I never, ever leave that spot without a smiling checker or cashier or teller at a bank. Always. That's the situation. What I have done is change all the energy around me. I've changed the energy around that person. I've changed the energy for the next person in line. Just simply by that one little response of being upbeat. Now, there's all kinds of scientific proof out there now around the chemical reactions that are going on in the bodies, about the electromagnetic field of the heart and the mind as those things transpire. The science is there, and I love the fact that the science is now catching up with this entire philosophy of change your thinking, change your life.
I guess I'll bring up some of my favorites, But one of them, okay, like there's an emotional response, because there's a felt sense, and there's to what comes in. And maybe it's based on my core belief system. I think that we really react to our interpretations much more than... I think that there's no way we can touch reality without an interpretation. Or it's so much a part of the human abstracting capability at this point in society and stuff. Maybe the primitive men are somewhere, but we've killed them all, mostly all of them, put them on reservations or something. I don't know what, but I mean, there's so much of our reaction is, I believe, based on our interpretation of what's going on. It's our verbalization of what's going on, and basically these two things can happen two ways. Usually it's like, what was that? And something kind of squeezes, right? There's some kind of squeezing reaction, and we could call it stress or anxiety. I would call it stress or anxiety. And then the other one, of course, happens too. Like, okay, there's my grandson, he's just doing something cool, wow, or my dog brings something over to me, or, it doesn't have to be or nature, or, somehow there's an opening. So there's an opening and a closing, right? And so in a closing, all comes up with some kind of avoidance, like, that's where all the avoidance and all the explanations of and fears and trying to figure things out really happens a lot in the avoidance, in the closing reactions, and so then that's where really the world is working on stress reactions. It's kind of like the call to action is anxiety based, is what I'm saying. And we say, because everything is urgent, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And the whole world, we said, is changing so fast, it's heating up. And so then it's getting more urgent, and it's moving faster, and stability, there's less stability, which could be a good thing, too, because maybe stability is false. It's only an idea. It's only a concept that things are fixed and that I've got a career and stuff like that. All those kind of things are just an overlay on life, and life is changing. Okay, it's changing faster and faster and faster, so then we can't hold on to those things anymore. Those concepts get worn out really quick. And so I'm saying that we believe that we're justified in having that closure and having those kind of like anxiety and fear and angry and upset reactions. We believe that upset is functional and works and helps us. And actually, we wouldn't get serious. We wouldn't be serious, and we wouldn't really get anything done, and we'd just be laying in front of the TV or something if we didn't get serious and mad and stuff like that. And we believe that you got to be stern in the world, and we need a good army and a good defense, and there's an arms trade because people are out to get us, and the whole thing is this anxiety-based thing. And somehow, I'm not saying that it's going to go away overnight, and that it's just we're going to wish it away, and I won't have those feelings. But somehow we can lose faith in it, and just even in our I don't even have to say in world relationships. I just say in our family, and just in our work relationships, and just in our community, we can just start saying that chewing somebody out is an old response, and it's never really worked. Here we are now, we passed another century, and in looking back on that other century, it looks like we were really miserable failures. We really brought this place down, and our poor grandchildren are going to have, how are they ever going to get us out of debt? How are they ever going to have enough resources? How are they ever going to feed the population? We've really set them up for a real tough time, if not a disaster. And so then, what's the alternate? I mean, somehow we're talking love and realizing oneness and pausing, and we don't even know what it is. But somehow, can't we just say that that old syndrome? We lose faith in it. We don't, it's just not working. You guys be mean and stuff, but I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm just.
It isn't working, and it hasn't worked, and it hasn't worked for a really long time. The 20th century was the bloodiest century in the history of mankind. We had more war and more death than any time in the history of the world. I mean, it's not working for us, and it's this is a whole other show. But in my worldview, we are coming to the end of living life from the Darwinian perspective of survival of the fittest. The age of competition has been a miserable failure, and we are now moving into a time of collaboration, cooperation, and co-creation, where we recognize that we are in this together. We are here to support one another. And when we start talking about the idea of everything, our entire lives are run by our interpretation and our reactions, yes, that's true. And you know what? Once again, Richard, I think nothing is this simple, and that's why I make a living as a spiritual counselor, because people need help to activate these things. But there are some really simple ways to express some of the possible solutions. And all of the things you described were all of my personal or collective judgments of things being good or bad. Suppose I just made a decision one day to stop saying things are good or bad. If from this moment forward, suppose I just decided to say, I have good news and I have interesting news, as opposed to good and bad. Because when I say good and bad, my mind instantly spirals down into, why is it bad? What makes it bad? How is it bad for me? How could it be any worse? But if I say there's the good and there is the interesting, then my conscious mind instantaneously looks at interesting and says, oh, interesting? How so? And now all of a sudden, I am in problem-solving mode. I am in conscious thinking mode, as opposed to that subconscious, pre-programmed, it's bad. I have expanded my consciousness in that very moment, and I can do it time and time again by just ceasing to use the judgmental word that defines bad, and just always say, that's interesting. And everything is different. It's really, once again, the solutions are really, really simple. Are they easy? No, because we're drilled. We are absolutely and thoroughly ensconced in the society we live in, the times we live in, and our media, our news, our every outlet that there is, our friends, our relationships, all we talk about is the economy is failing, this is failing, this is going to hell in a handbasket, that's a mess, this is all a catastrophe, people have just been buried in an earthquake in New Zealand, all of these negative things, and we are constantly going, boy, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad. Suppose I just said, you know what? The demise of all of these amazing, iconic economic institutions is interesting. Maybe then the conversation goes from how bad all of the executives of these companies took advantage of us to how might I make this work for me? How might this be an opportunity for me? How might I use this as an opportunity to stand in the truth of who I really am, as opposed to spiraling down into that victim state of, boy, oh boy, you know what? The powers that be got us all by the short hairs and we're all doomed.
I mean, I'm totally with you on that, but here's how I want to say it, because like a lot of times spirituality ignores that stuff or tries to just say, and I do it too. I turn off the news, and so then I don't even know there's an earthquake, but it's not really my solution. It's not really what I want to do is just to say, well, cut it out of my life and I'll just go blindfolded, let me just be, because I don't have to deny it or say that it doesn't exist. So what I'm saying is, though, when you start to list all those things, there's an earthquake, there's a fuel shortage, there's a global warming, all those things, and you can say it in such a great way. I mean, everybody can, the news can, and your heart just closes. You can feel it going, oh God, and then you think, I got to do something about this. But I'm just saying that you can say, this is a time when my heart can open. You can just feel it, and you can still do things about it. You can still activate yourself and just say, and I'm feeling so much love. Even because those bankers ripped us off and they didn't even know what to do, They just said, I'll take it for me, Or somehow they got that money, but the whole world didn't collapse. I mean, the world is in a tremendous fragile situation because of banking and what runs business and what runs commerce and what runs, trade. Trade meaning just going to the grocery store and being able and have the shelves be full. I mean, it's a tremendously fragile state that we're in, and it just could make you feel. I think you can just move just as strong and much stronger from an open-heartedness, and just feel like that other feeling, that closed feeling, is an imposter, and that it's actually probably, if there's such a thing as cause and effect, that could be just as causative as anything else, as just creating another disaster or something, a more bad feeling. And I'm not saying deny it or ignore it or close your eyes to it. I'm just saying, but consciously walk in there with your heart wide open and your love just totally on fire, and just and try to make it all happen with what how minds can meet and decide a course of action.
I think that you've hit that nail squarely on the head. I think one of the reasons for meditation in my book is to be quiet and be with my source and open up to the possibilities, open up to the opportunity. There's in my mind, I am really clear that everything that is happening on this planet, everything that is happening in my life, everything that is happening in my world is in some way, shape, or form serving my highest good. Now, the problem I run into is that my ego wants to know, really, what is it? Where is it? We're looking around every corner for that good. That's not what it is. It's about knowing. It is serving my highest good. And in recognizing that and realizing that it will unfold when it unfolds, then I now can open myself up, open my heart up, as you said, to opportunity. What is the opportunity here? What are the possibilities here? Because when you did a perfect visual there of you folded yourself up like this. Well, when you fold yourself up in a ball like that, opportunity and possibilities is simply going to bounce off of you. You are not going to be open to the slightest good or new thing to happen to you ever. All that's ever going to happen is the same old swirling around you, and your little ball is going to get tighter and tighter and tighter. If I open up and I say yes to the universe, if I say yes to the divine, then I am ready, willing, and able to accept more good into my life than I have ever experienced, ever imagined, ever manifested or expressed. That, to me, is a reason to start on some kind of a daily practice, some kind of an idea of I'm going to just sit quietly, turn off the noise, listen to the signal, and just be with me and be comfortable in my own skin and recognize and know that everything good that's going to happen to me is going to start right here. It's going to come from my own heart. It's not going to come from out here. It's not going to come from anybody or anything. It's going to come from me. My source is within.
You know, I love it. I totally love it. And I want to just make sure I say that, because sometimes when we say law of attraction or something like that, people think it's going to come through some kind of magic, spiritual magic or something like that. Or, you know, manna's going to come down from heaven. But it's just so clear what you say is, it's just if you either say yes or no, you know. I mean, because when you're like this, that is a no. I'm too busy. I can't take anything in, you know. And it's just a huge no to life, and a yes is not even a yes. It's just the absence of that no. It's just like life flows. Life flows without. It doesn't even need a yes to get in. It doesn't need a passport to get in. Life is already here.
Let me give you a great piece here, because the law of attraction is, I think, one of the great misunderstood ideas in the history of mankind.
Right on.
I mean, people think we go to movies like The Secret, which was amazing, and What the Bleep Do We Know, which was even more amazing. But the problem is people wound up with Manifestation 101 on their minds, and they think the law of attraction is just to sit at your desk and contemplate the arrival of all your good. Well, if you sit at your desk and contemplate that, eventually someone's going to come and repossess that desk. The law of attraction is not about getting anything. The law of attraction is exactly what you and I are talking about right now. The law of attraction is accepting the universe's invitation to be more. The universe is inviting me to be more and bigger and to think from my higher mind every minute of every single day that I am here. And all I need to do is accept that invitation, open myself up, and the good comes flowing in from every direction.
Invitation to participate. You know, you're a participant. Don't forget.
No, the great physicist John Wheeler said we live in a participatory universe. Now, we all participate. The question is, do you want to consciously participate, or do you just want to participate at the level of living in the wake of my participation? That's a choice we all get to make.
We've said so many great things, you know, and I don't want to close before we talk a little bit about your great work. I know you do a lot of work with youth groups. And I'm just thinking, like, if youth have to go out and invent the wheel and go through all the crap that I've gone through, you know, that would be like the worst tragedy in the world, you know. Somehow we got to make sure they're not, I don't know, I guess they're not anyhow. You probably know, because they're probably not interested whatsoever in what we did or what we think. And maybe, you know, it's certainly time for us oldsters to hand the wheel over, you know, and just say, hey, you guys take it. You're more capable than we ever were.
That's interesting. I don't think it's time to hand the wheel over. What I really truly believe is that the young people in this world are making a huge difference, and we see that all over the Middle East right now, and all of these countries where these violent revolutions are happening, where they're trying to overthrow their governments for freedom, for the opportunity to make a living, for the opportunity to put food on the table. All of those countries have populations that are more than 50% under the age of 30. That's interesting to me. These people, these young people, they need the guidance of those who are willing to stand in their truth and say, okay, I get that what we have laid out for you over the past 150 years hasn't worked so hot. But there are other ways to do this, and some of us know that, and some of us are clear on it. And here, let me give you a leg up and show you what this is about. That's the work that I do with young people. It's about lifting their consciousness. The work that I do with young people is about activating with them daily practice. It's about the idea that if you want to have a true relationship with yourself, with the universe, and how everything unfolds in your life, learn a daily practice. Learn to meditate. Learn to do affirmations. If prayer work calls to you, use prayer. Whatever it is, but it's about being with yourself. It's about reactivating new thought processes in your head, not reactivating, but activating new thought processes in your head, making new neural connections. Those new neural connections then you reinforce by practice. You create a new mindset. You create a new way of life for yourself and for everybody you interact with.
That's where I want to go, you know, to really talk with more young people. And sometimes we even find people that step up and want to speak and say what world's like for them. And I just like to see it. So Let's do it together. Let's get some.
Okay, cool. There's another thing. Before we go here, I did just want to mention one thing. It's not just about the young people, because there's lots of people, middle-aged people, who are struggling with their lives right now, who are confused about where they're supposed to go, what they're supposed to do, and they really, truly get that there's something more for them to do, that there's a higher calling for them. And I don't mean this is a shameless plug, but on March 18th and 19th, I am doing a webinar. So all you need is a computer and a headset. You can do this from the comfort of your home. But I'm doing a webinar with a best-selling author, Sue Frederick, who wrote the book, I See Your Dream Job. What we are going to give people is a pathway to aligning with their purpose, and not just aligning with it, but know what your purpose is and start to activate the process of aligning with it right here, right now, where you are. Not turning your life upside down, not doing something 100% different from what you're doing, just getting to start the ball rolling and moving in the right direction. And if people are interested in that, they can go to my website, which I'm sure you're going to put up. It's makingitOutAlive.com. Or they can go on Facebook and look for our page on that is Align With Your Purpose, and they will see a picture of my partner in this program, Sue Frederick, there. But adults are needing some guidance. We've spent an entire lifetime, or each individual lifetime, we have spent getting to where we are right now, and so many of us have fallen into this dilemma, this challenge, if you will, of the world, that everything we knew is different. Everything we grew up with is different. Everything we came to depend on is different, and we don't know. As much as people want to start something new, they want to begin something new, they want to embark on their higher purpose, they don't know where to start. And I hope that what I'm doing can be somewhat of a bridge for those people from the invisible to the visible, where they can actually start to step into what their higher purpose might be in this world.
Great, Ken. We'll sure have a link up. We'll get this film up pretty quick so people can consider this, and then maybe we'll figure out what the link is, right, to get registered or whatever they have to do to see where you guys are.
Very good. Thank you.
So, Ken Ludwig, thank you very much. And thanks, everybody, for coming and giving us a listen. And you know where to write, and you'll have Ken's coordinates if you want to check out what he's up to. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Richard. It was a real pleasure. I truly enjoyed this.
Likewise. So, okay,
cool.
Goodbye for now.